All right, hello. Welcome everybody. We have a special guest, returning guest, Orsha Magyar. Yeah, so we have done two very incredible and successful sessions on her workshop all about the glymphatic system, very different but similar to the lymphatic system and how to detox the brain. And rightly so, a lot of people are concerned about mental health, brain health, cognitive ability, and the subsequent decline as we age. And this class, Orsha, being her area of expertise, being someone that's a neuroscientist that's focused on mental health, brain health, through her company, Neurotrition, really in this presentation went through, number one, what is the glymphatic system? How does it operate and how does it affect, mental cognitive functioning and what you can do about it, diet, lifestyle, all those factors were covered. And in this session, we're going to go through some questions that came out of the class. So again, we had a different set of questions that came out of the previous class, which is awesome. And we've got a bunch of different ones here. So you're about to hear the answers to very specific questions that you might find very relevant and beneficial to your brain health or a loved one that you know. So definitely stay tuned and share this with anybody you might know that finds this interesting. And if you've missed the class, this will be a great kind of primer for joining us. Again, we're going to run it again in the autumn. You can join in person, you can join online. We always have a great time. Orsha's, wonderful, lovely energy, super knowledgeable, and excited to have her back on the call with us right now.
Thanks so much for having me. I learned so much from having to dig into the research for these excellent questions we receive at the end of these workshops. So let's jump right in. I'm ready.
Okay, cool. Right on. So let's start with, one thing that did come up was the importance of dopamine. And we're talking about, sources of dopamine, and specifically, I think you're going to share about this, why it needs to be a precursor, L-DOPA. And there was a question about Mucuna pruriens. Is that a source of L-DOPA? And is that a good thing to add in with the topic that we're covering?
Yeah, it was an excellent question. You may have heard of Mucuna. It's also known as the magical velvet bean. And it's been used for a really, really long time in other cultures. It's kind of an annual, kind of like growing upwards legume. It hails from southern China. This was new to me based on the research, as well as Eastern India. And it is being used in these cultures and in Ayurvedic medicine for the treatment of a number of things, but most importantly, and now validated by Western science, for Parkinson's disease. And that is because it is the highest naturally occurring source. Between 4 to 7% of this bean is L-DOPA. So I dove into the research because I didn't know, is this legit? Is this being shown in clinical trials? And I did find one really nicely done, double-blind, placebo-controlled clinical trial. And what they showed was that in patients with Parkinson's disease, they replaced their daily medication with this beautiful magical velvet bean, and they found two really cool, interesting things. They found that the onset of effects to control the Parkinson's symptoms was faster with Mucuna.
Wow.
And the on time was significantly longer. It was 21% longer. And in this study, it was almost 40 minutes longer, how long it worked as opposed to the medication. So this study, at least this suggested that the magical velvet bean does in fact work. Before today's call, Malcolm, I was just attending an online recording of an integrative neurology conference, and one of the doctors speaking was talking about Mucuna. He said that, unfortunately, it does not cross the blood-brain barrier. So then I was like, oh no, like, how's this working? Is this placebo? These Parkinson's patients in this beautiful study I was reading to prep for today's meeting, they didn't know what they were getting. Like, how did it work? And he said, just because something isn't necessarily crossing the blood-brain barrier, it is absolutely still working indirectly, most likely through the gut-brain axis. So yeah, I think Mucuna's for real. I think it's great. It's a great source of L-DOPA, and it is working.
Cool, amazing. Yeah, that's something that we've carried for years at the shop. I don't know the origins of this. You mentioned I like the name you given it, the magical velvet bean. There's another reference to it being called like Nescafe.
Oh, cool.
Again, yeah, because I assume that it's given that term because it kind of tastes a somewhat coffee-like. You can do a
Oh,
beverage
cool.
just by itself in hot water. We carry a water extract
Okay.
that I'll have to look at the top of my head in terms of, you mentioned the bean containing anywhere into 4 to 7%. Well,
Yeah.
the problem is, well, how do you get that into, a supplement that's easily absorbable? I
Yeah.
believe.
So, and that's exactly, you're right. What this neurologist said, who, of course, he's prescribing L-Dopa to his patients with PD. And he said, like, I'm not against Mucuna, but how do we standardize? Like, if someone's sick, how do I know how much of the powder or the supplement to give them? We don't know. We don't
Yeah,
know.
yeah.
An added fun fact. So I didn't know you carried Mucuna, and I was like, I don't know where to get this. So now I know where to send clients. But then I dove back into PubMed and looked for something similar that was maybe more widely available to average consumers at a grocery store. Broad beans, aka fava beans, is how they're called in North America, or fava beans, are also a really nice source of L-Dopa. I found one pretty limited study. It only had 11 participants, but they found that in Parkinson's patients, it was pharmacologically active. So there you go, Mucuna, or if you can't access it and maybe you're joining online, you don't have access to the light cellar, you can try the fava bean.
Okay. And
Yeah,
the only contraindication I know of for Mucuna is if you're breastfeeding, it
that's right.
inhibits prolactin.
Yeah.
So stay away from it if you're
Yeah.
breastfeeding. Otherwise, I think it's all
Otherwise,
good.
it's shown to be safe. So how cool is that?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
like I say, the flavor's kind of like coffee, works really well with chocolate and other things like that, and that
Nice.
kind of dark, earthy flavor compound. All
That's so
right.
cool. That's so cool. Because again, just one more thing, because I spent my entire master's degree studying just the dopamine system. So I love dopamine. And, we talk about dopamine with Parkinson's disease when it's in one particular part of the brain in the back in an area called the substantia nigra. But everywhere else in the brain with dopamine, it's all about motivation and drive and all those important things for mental health. So it's important everywhere. So if we can find a natural way to boost it, that's an amazing thing.
Yeah, very cool. Okay, well, let's keep on the theme of the blood-brain barrier because a question did come up: which types of magnesium cross the
Mhm.
blood-brain barrier? The questioner suggested that magnesium 3 and 8 did, but
Yep.
maybe there's more to it. Like you
Yep.
mentioned about Mucuna, it doesn't
Yep.
always need to cross.
So yeah, let's talk about that. As you guys listening in, watching probably know, when you go to the supplement store, there's a lot of different types of magnesium, right? And magnesium 3 and 8 is shown without a doubt to cross the blood-brain barrier. That's great. However, we need to be a little bit cautious and careful when we're looking at supplements or claims that a lot of supplements are making that only their supplement, only magnesium 3 and 8 crosses. I've even seen a lot of brands saying, oh, magnesium 3 and 8 is the brain magnesium. Not so, not necessarily. Other types of magnesium have also been shown to cross the blood-brain barrier. Magnesium citrate, which is an often more budget-friendly, more affordable for many people, also crosses. Magnesium oxide, chloride, taurate does cross as well. So there are a few different types of magnesium that do cross. The magnesium that I, in my practice, work the most with is called magnesium glycinate. It actually does not cross the blood-brain barrier. So now you might be thinking, what? Magnesium just introduced you as being a neuroscientist and working with brain conditions. And here's why. Even though magnesium glycinate has not, unfortunately, been shown to cross the blood-brain barrier, it exhibits a really, really high absorption rate and bioavailability. And so it is shown to have the most relaxing effect and the most anti-anxiety effect. So I actually work with magnesium glycinate for depression and for anxiety, whereas I would work more with magnesium 3 and 8, which goes immediately up to the brain, for cognition, for learning memory. So very different types of magnesium for different things.
Very cool. Okay, appreciate that. Well, let's dive into, we'll kind of rapid fire here. The next question is a little bit longer, so I'll read it out and I'll let you run with it. So, does the degree of leakiness of the blood-brain barrier have any correlation with the strength and functions of the glymphatic system? Question mark. Do heavy metals, chemicals, or anything that made their way and were deposited into the brain recently or long ago have the potential to be transferred out? she's assuming that would only be possible through the work of the glymphatic, not other systems.
Okay. So this was a great question and multi-angled. So I'm going to answer it in parts. So let's start with what are the jobs of the blood-brain barrier versus the glymphatic system. So in a nutshell, the job of the blood-brain barrier is to keep your brain and blood flow through the brain separate from cerebrospinal fluid. Whereas the job of the glymphatic system is to cleanse and to then clear or drain that CSF. So what we know is that the blood-brain barrier and the glymphatic system have kind of complementary roles. They work together. And what we see is that when the glymphatic system is working, which we explored a lot in the workshop, it turns on at night, right? And that's why sleep is so key, because the glymphatic system is working and clearing toxins from the brain when we sleep. The glymphatic system pushes cerebrospinal fluid to the blood-brain barrier. And that way, indirectly, the blood-brain barrier becomes more active. So they're kind of like increasing their activity together. We have studies that show people who have reduced glymphatic system activity, such as those with dementia, Parkinson's disease, traumatic brain injury, also have reduced blood-brain barrier activity. So they go down together. And then other studies show that if someone has neuroinflammation and their blood-brain barrier is affected in a negative way, that as a consequence slows glymphatic drainage. So they're working together. And we see in most cases of neurodegenerative disease, we see toxins build up in the brain that should be getting cleared by both glymphatics and the blood-brain barrier. So they're working together. In terms of heavy metals, I tried to go into like what actually clears it. And there's a very specific type of cell in the brain called an astrocyte that is responsible for clearing things like lead, mercury, cadmium, and arsenic. Those are the four really big ones that when we look at autopsies of people with Alzheimer's, Parkinson's disease, unfortunately, we see those four toxic heavy metals all over the brain. We also see these four accumulated when we look at samples of brain tumors. So these astrocytes their job primarily is to clear this junk out. And interestingly, as you learned in my workshop, for those of you that came, astrocytes are what form the glymphatic system. So they're totally, related.
Wow, very cool. Okay.
My long-winded answer. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I'm loving it. You're just nailing these answers. So it's so awesome. Okay, here's maybe an easy one. Does head massage have any effect on the glymphatic system? And like obviously they're coming from the idea that, massage is good for the lymphatic system. What about head massage and glymphatic system?
This was actually the hardest one for me to research. I didn't know, when the person asked it, Anya asked it. Yeah. Who works with you at the Light Cellar. And I was like, I don't know, but that's a genius question. So I'm going to see, is what's going on? So yes, there is a type of massage called a marma. M-A-R-M-A, a marma massage or a marma scalp point massage. Have you heard of it?
Yeah, I know.
Okay, I have not. And it has been shown to increase glymphatic drainage. And here's what it is, if you guys want to try it yourself or research it. So basically in the body, there's like 108 of these marma points and 37 of them are in the head and the neck. So you might be like, what is a marma? So there are these very tiny little veins called emissary veins, and they kind of run out of the brain along these, they're called sagittal sinuses near the top of the brain, and they go through tiny holes in your cranium. Cranium is just made up of the bones of your skull. So these veins poke through and they come up to the scalp. And so you from the outside can actually activate them to increase blood flow and increase glymphatic drainage. So the way they run, if you think about it, like where would I be massaging? It's almost like a mohawk here. And you want to kind of activate them. The research said not necessarily your fingertips, but your thumbs. And you want to really, really dig in. And Ayurvedic practitioners, if you want to go see someone for an Ayurvedic marma point massage, can actually activate it. And it's not going to be one of those massages that we're used to from what I read here in North America. So for example, like the concept of massage beds is very European, very North American. In an Ayurvedic massage, you're seated. The patient is seated and it's very vigorous. It's not relaxing, which is kind of what you might expect. It's a vigorous kind of marma massage along this kind of mohawk. And yeah, it improves lymphatic drainage.
Amazing.
I didn't
Cool.
know. It was so cool to learn. Yeah.
All right, so we got two more super juicy questions. One about
Yep.
CBD and THC, and then another about the COVID
Mhm.
effect on lymphatic system. So let's dive into that one. The effect of COVID and or the vaccine on the
Yeah.
glymphatic system, if any.
I wasn't able to find much. And I promise I spent like an hour trying to be like, what is there any data? Because there's a lot of people theorizing, on both sides online. So I'm like, okay, what can I dig up? So possibly with COVID long haulers, I was able to find some potential data of a reduction in glymphatic system activity. So reduced drainage of all those neurotoxins in these long haulers, with the resulting neuroinflammation. And so then I anecdotally thought, I couldn't find any data, but okay, if this is happening in the long haulers, could this neuroinflammation theory possibly hold for some people who received the vaccine? And I think it could. So
Yeah,
no hard data, but I'm just thinking out loud. I think, yeah,
for
possibly.
sure. Yeah, I mean, it's still pretty fresh, pretty new in that regard as well.
But it'll be
Okay,
interesting to see if they're gonna, if they'll test it and what we'll get back.
yeah. All right, so the final question about CBD slash THC affecting REM.
Yeah. So rapid eye movements. So the stage of sleep where you're dreaming, right? So, but you're hopefully a little bit paralyzed. So you're not acting out your dreams. There's certain sleep disorders of REM where people aren't paralyzed and they can hurt themselves or hurt the person that they're sleeping beside. So let's look at, cannabis and what in it possibly has an effect on REM. So it's definitely THC. THC is known to suppress REM. And this makes sense when you think about maybe some reasons that people are smoking cannabis or taking cannabis and cannabinoids with higher THC content. It's for that ability to suppress REM, because THC, when it suppresses REM, has been shown to help reduce nightmares. That's when you're sleeping. So people with things like post-traumatic stress disorder have a lot of nightmares and triggering and re-experiencing their trauma in their sleep during REM. And that's why high THC cannabis can be really helpful for them. THC, in addition to reducing REM, I found in the research, overall increases sleep and reduces wakefulness. Now with CBD, the research is starting. It's just not really there yet. There's some small studies showing a small increase in sleep from CBD, but it appears to be THC that does it for sleep and REM.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Well, we got everything wrapped into 20 minutes. So
Nice.
really appreciate you
Happy to.
doing this. Yeah, like you say, you learn at the same time and adding to the depthness, to the rich of this course, which we're going to be offering again coming up in the autumn. We haven't set a date yet. Could be September, at the very latest, be October. You're welcome to join Orsha in person or online. It's a fantastic workshop, nice deep dive, and you might have questions of your own, these kinds of things. And so look forward to hosting you for that. Go to lightseller.ca and we should have the details soon. So yeah, thanks for this Q&A. And yeah, keep up the great work. For those that want to kind of connect with you now, how can they reach you?
Yeah, definitely. So you're welcome to come to our website, neurotrition.ca. You can email us, info@neurotrition.ca, or you can email me personally, orsha@neurotrition.ca. We're accepting new patients always. We have an office in downtown Calgary, and we also see people internationally online through our virtual offices. So please connect. We're offering brain detox programs, our newest offering here at Neurotrition, by activating and optimizing the glymphatic system. So really, really cool, and all natural through diet, supplement, and lifestyle way to increase your glymphatics. It's a really up and coming area of research that is trickling down to the masses, and I think it's going to be one of the ways that we look at healthy brain aging and reducing our risk of neuro disease as we age in the future. So Malcolm, thank you as always. It's such a blast to get a chance to work with you.
Oh, right on. Yeah, likewise. Cool. Well, thanks again for tuning in, and we'll say bye for now.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.